My idea for these live events came from my work with Real Mushrooms, doing their monthly pet Q&A, something that I've been doing for several years, and realized that it's really a great resource for the pet parent to be able to have someone to answer your questions directly. And Real Mushrooms, it looks like, is going to start writing down their pet Q&As, and they're going to be referring people to this Q&A as well. So we should have pretty good attendance. And so I so it's great to see so many people coming on board. Welcome to everyone. Welcome to our first inaugural journey for Doc Silver Live, for the kind of an extension of what had been the Real Mushrooms Pet Q&A. I would like to ask those of you who have joined us to please mute yourself because we can all hear what you're saying, and it makes it a lot easier makes it a lot easier for me to talk to you. We can also mute you ourselves, but it'd be nice if you did that. So and these events, I my agenda for these events, and let me share the screen. I've got a couple of slides I wanted to share with you that have information about what we're going to be doing. Is that working, Haley? Are you see? Is that sharing?
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. Anyway, so yeah, welcome to Doc Rob Live, and wanted to start with a couple of housekeeping informations. Some of you have already submitted questions to us by email, so we have those, and we're going to try to answer those, and we'll use those. If you're familiar with how to use the chat, and you have a question that you haven't posed by email, but that's part of your agenda for coming here, probably a question about your own pet and that you're not getting the answers for, or you're just trying to figure it out yourself. So put those questions in the chat. There may be more questions and there's time to answer them all. We're supposed to be here about an hour, but we can go over. We'll see how that goes. Um, um, and if we have the same type of question answered by multiple people, of course, that would have a greater priority. And raise your hand. There's a thing here which has reactions on it, and you can raise your hand. I think actually these days you can even visually raise your hand. And if you're not understanding what I'm saying, I don't want to interrupt too much the flow of what I'm saying, but at the same time, it's really important to me that everyone be on the same page and learns things. And if there's something I'm saying that you just don't get, let's ask out, because you're probably not the only person who is not getting it. And wanted to say that, of course, it's great to have time with the veterinarian to answer your questions, and I want to do the best job that I can to answer your questions. But I don't have a doctor-patient relationship with your pet, which involves a direct contact, listening to the heart, looking in the eyes and the mouth, taking a temperature, those types of measurements. And so from a legal or from an ethical standpoint, I have to be a little careful about giving medical advice in this telemedicine context, but I will be giving you good educational information. I will point you in the right direction. And in the next, and there's also an email that you can use to reach out to me, and perhaps I can help you more in that direction. We're trying to be very compliant with FDA regulations. We don't want to get shut down. We think this is a great resource. Just have to be careful. I can't really be giving you the medical advice. I can't counter the advice that your veterinarian has said, but I'll try to give you information that will help you to better understand and make a choice that would be good for your critter. Um, we're planning on offering these events monthly, the fourth Thursday of each month or the first Thursday of each month, depending how it works out. And we're going to be recording these sessions. They are being recorded right now. So you'll find those recordings on our website, under the menu item at the top that says About Us. I think that's what it says. And we're going to provide you when the recording comes out. We'll also provide you in the email that we send that link to you with a visual picture of where you can find that link on the website. But it also will be available on my YouTube channel, which has a lot of other videos on it that you might find quite useful. I'm going to be using my book. There's a mushroom for that. If you aren't aware that this book exists or that I've written it, I think you'll find it to be a great partner for these live sessions. In this book, I detail 7 different conditions in pets, including allergies and arthritis and anxiety and cancer and digestive disorders and epilepsy and wellness, and tell little stories. Tonight, I'm going to read you a little bit out of the chapter on allergies because tonight's topic is meant to be allergies. We did our email campaign earlier this week on seasonal allergies as well. And these email campaigns oftentimes will contain discounts and links to products that we think might be appropriate for the condition we're talking about. So we're going to link those email campaigns with the topics that we do here. If you'd like to purchase the book yourself, this scan tag that you can see, it will take you directly to Amazon where you can purchase it. And if you already have the book, or if you do purchase the book and want to send us your receipt, a copy of your receipt, send it to this email, questions@wellpethelp.com. And in return, we will send you a discount coupon good for 2 times for 25% off of anything site-wide on my website. Tonight, we're also offering a discount coupon, but because these are being recorded, we're not going to give you that coupon code until the very end. Also would like to, to encourage you to stay through the whole time for that reason, but we don't want to have it recorded and then we're going to have all these issues with people, a year from now using discount codes and getting upset because it's not working. So, and then that same email there, questions@wellpethelp.com, is also a great way for you to reach out to me. That comes directly to my inbox. If you've got questions about tonight, if questions we didn't get answered, you've got further questions, whatever, that's me. I get like 100 emails every morning in my inbox. It drives me crazy. It takes me a couple of hours to get them done. But I think it's really important. I think it's a really important place for me to reach out and to help you as best I can in my role as a guide, as a coach, as a mentor, not necessarily as your, on-site veterinarian. Okay, so let's talk a bit about this month's topic, pet allergies. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of that. And also, I just wanted to have for your consideration that we'd like to have you play a role in deciding what next month's topic will be. And so I have a list of these, and you can certainly put your vote in the chat at any time you want, during this meeting, and then we will later tally all that up and use that to make our decision regarding what topic to talk about next month. So, okay, let's talk about allergies. Allergies, seem to be one of the biggest problems that pets get. And it's not just that it's a common problem, it's that it's oftentimes a very difficult problem to manage. And rarely can we really say that we cure allergies. We're usually managing them and trying to reduce the adverse effects that we see from the symptoms or from the drugs that are being used to treat it. Excuse me for a sec. So, so that's where I think it's important to understand that making major that oftentimes just looking at a magic pill is not going to be enough to stop the allergies. It may help to modify the symptoms, and pharmaceuticals certainly can do that as well. But oftentimes we need to build almost like a lifestyle kind of a protocol that involves diet, involves, where you go with the animal in terms of its exposure to things or exposure to food, exposure to environmental things. And it involves the use of supplements that work the best when they're given daily for weeks and months at a time. So, taking that into context, there's rarely quick fixes, but there are a number of things that we can do that can help your critter. And as you're probably aware, if you've had pets with allergies, that not all pets have the same degree of allergy. Some of them are extremely severe, and some of them are very mild. And so there, that also goes into the whole mix as far as how well we can fix your pet, well we can manage the symptoms that it's seeing from the allergies. So what is an allergy? Well, an allergy is basically a hypersensitivity that the immune system has. We don't quite understand how this gets programmed into the immune system, but we do know that oftentimes it's very early exposure that the young growing puppy or kitten or human being has to something that is coinciding with some other event that messes up the immune system's processing of that exposure. And such to the extent that the immune system believes that that whatever it is reacting to is a mortal threat to the animal. And that's why sometimes these symptoms are just so huge when we're really just talking about pollen. So there are three types of allergies that we talk about. We have contact allergies, which could come, for instance, from, let's say, brushing up against a poison ivy leaf. Now, that's not just an allergy, it's actually a toxin, actually. But there's many things that we can be in contact with. And contact allergies are probably the simplest if you can determine what is the cause of that contact allergy and you can avoid it. You can have good control over that. Another type of allergy is what we call the seasonal or the environmental allergies. Oftentimes, this is due to plants that are growing and are throwing off their pollen and being inhaled by the animal, and then their immune system is mounting a reaction. Um, Sometimes and so that's why we oftentimes think that the allergies are seasonal. They coincide with the growth of plants. So we oftentimes see these kinds of seasonal allergies depending the climate where you live, starting in the springtime and maybe getting worse in the summer and even getting worse in the fall when you have even more particulate matter being released from these plants. And environmental allergies are really some of the toughest ones to deal with because you can't escape the environment. You can't stop breathing air that might be laden with pollen and all of these offensive antigens. Antigens are these materials that stimulate a reaction from the immune system. So they can be the very most difficult to treat and to deal with. And that's where we look at some of these conventional treatments that use allergy hyposensitization, which might be the allergy shots. Now we're using oral, and in a way, it's almost a little bit like homeopathy when we're treating allergies this way, because we're using a teeny amount of the offending allergen, so little that the animal doesn't really react to it, but it allows the immune system to develop tolerance to that. And it can work. Many times it can work. It can take time. It can take months, for it to have enough of an impact on the symptoms that they reduce, but it can be another approach to it. But environmental allergies are the worst. And then there's food allergies. The food allergies are quite common, and maybe 25% of all dogs, based on the studies they've done, have those. Food allergies, have very specific symptoms associated with them. And they're probably my favorite kind of allergy because you can change what you're feeding. And there's some tests that we can do to identify what ingredients of foods are creating these reactions that we can then eliminate them possibly from the food we're feeding. And so, but it's rare in an animal if they have an allergic nature to them to have it just be one or the other. Usually there is a little bit of one and a lot of the other. In the worst case, a lot of both, And so we need to look at every aspect of it when it comes to allergies. So what I wanted to do now, and I'm glad to see we've got a really nice group here, is I just wanted to read the chapter, but not the whole chapter, just the beginning part, kind of about this dog that I had seen in my exam room for allergies. And this is Poochie Smith. My dog is scratching herself so much she is keeping me awake at night, causing sores and bleeding on her skin. She's also making disgusting licking sounds when she isn't scratching herself. Does that sound familiar? Her greasy skin and hair coat are so smelly I can smell it the moment I open the front door. Can you help me help my poor, miserable pet without using steroids, which make her fat, aggressive, and pee in the house? That's all my vets have ever offered to treat her, and although they stop the scratching, the side effects just get to be too much for me to handle. I hear this type of thing so often from my clients who have allergic dogs. Although not life-threatening, gaining control over these types of allergies is really challenging and sometimes seems impossible without the use of strong drugs like steroids. Um, Skip over that paragraph. The use of allergy shots can also be given orally. This hyposensitization approach is traditionally considered the best way to treat allergies, but these can take quite a bit of time to become effective. Um, when Poochie walked into my exam room, she was wearing a t-shirt wrapped around her waist with her front legs through the armholes and her head through the neck hole. I could smell the foul odor of her skin when she walked into my veterinary hospital. It was so strong in my exam room that it was almost overwhelming. Vets learn to mouth breathe to be able to not be close to that kind of smell for long periods of time and not die from it. If the odor doesn't come up through the nose, the smell is much less bad. Before I examined Poochie, I spent considerable time learning the history and background of her problem. Poochie is a 6-year-old spayed, female, black, standard poodle weighing 65 pounds. Carol, Poochie's mom, said that she started scratching herself at about 18 months of age. And typically, a lot of allergies do start quite young, from something that they were exposed to when they were, just neonates, just really not even weaned. We don't quite understand how they developed that sensitivity, but it worsened over the years. She'd seen a dermatology specialist who offered allergy testing and hyposensitization, these allergy shots. Carol tried the shots, but hadn't seen much in the way of results after a year. She tried the new allergy medication, Apoquil, and that seemed to work for a while, but now it wasn't so effective. She tried steroids and antihistamines, but the steroids made Poochie too aggressive to other dogs, and she just started peeing in the house. The antihistamines made her sleepy all the time. Carol tried supplements, fish oil, homeopathy, and even acupuncture, all to no avail. So when all else fails, they come to see me in their 11th hour. And I'm used to seeing the most difficult cases that aren't responding well to conventional medications. Many times my suggestions make a difference and they improve. Sometimes I fail too, and my suggestions don't make a difference. I prefer seeing these patients with difficult to treat conditions when they're just starting with the early symptoms. If I can see them before they start the use of medications, especially immune suppressive medications such as cyclosporin, prednisone, triamcinolone, dexamethasone, cytopoint, or Apoquil, I feel I can make more progress early in the case than if they had been on the drugs already, especially for a very long time. So, um, just if you have an allergic dog, I'm sure some of that sounds familiar to you. Um, um, there we go. Sorry. And so at this point, rather than getting into all the details that I have in the book about how I addressed allergies in Poochie, because allergies for each animal are a bit different. Um, I think that at this point, let's open it up. Where are we on time? 20 minutes in. That was about what I had estimated for this initial part. And this is what we're going to do. I hope, and if this is an organization, kind of an organization that you like, this is what you can expect each time. I'm a bit of a teacher type, so I like to have the first part have some information that you can use, and we'll use the book, as a platform. I think the stories I tell and the protocols that I use are pretty good. They're not necessarily perfect for every single animal. And so at this point, I'd like to open it up for questions, and I'd like to ask Haley, who is behind the scenes, helping us here to put those questions up. Let me leave this up here. And so am I still sharing the screen?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So yeah, let me leave that up for a little bit. And can you see me as well as the shared screen?
Yes, not on the screen itself.
Right, kind of up in the corner.
Yes, absolutely. But I am putting the questions in the chat as well.
Okay, that's good. So why don't you read the question to me, Haley? We're going to try to figure out, when we were doing these with real mushrooms, we were using a different platform where we could put a banner across the bottom that had the question on it. We're working on figuring out how to do that with this Zoom application. But for right now, why don't you read the question out, Haley, and let me get at it.
Sure. I'm interested in trying your CBD product for my very itchy Labrador Gibbs. We've recently started giving immunotherapy shots. I know those take some time to reset an immune system. I'm giving him, with the help of my holistic vet, Chinese herbs, PEA, digestive enzymes, quercetin, omega 3s. We're doing all the things, but I've never tried CBD.
Okay. So, and that was a great question because a lot of the things that she's using are tools that I highly recommend, including the PEA, palmitoyl ethanolamide, which is really very much related to CBD in the body. So, what she's doing is really good. She's doing the immunotherapy. I'm assuming she means that are either the shots or the daily oral treatment. And there have been several studies published. Using CBD in dogs with allergies. And what they have found is that most dogs will respond to the CBD. What the CBD has been able to do, one study from Japan, one study here from the US, is the CBD seems to reduce their itching. But they were disappointed in these studies because they didn't see the CBD changing the nature of the skin sores that might have arose from excessive itching or even just from the allergy itself causing the skin to have some reaction that way. So I think the CBD is a good idea. And the dosage for the way to dose the CBD, for those of you that would like to know, and I base my advice on the studies, is that the CBD should be started at about a quarter of a, and each CBD product is different. I've got some really good CBD products I'm happy to share with you, but the potency of each CBD product is different. The number of milligrams per liquid volume changes. So I'm going to just put it in terms of milligrams of CBD. You should be starting with a quarter of a milligram of CBD for every pound of body weight that your dog has, and you should give that twice daily. You need to give that in a little bit of food before a meal twice daily. So if you feed twice daily, maybe 30 minutes before that meal, put the CBD in something that's kind of fatty. I think canned cat food is simple, but you can put it in some cream or some milk, butter, hamburger. And the studies have shown for dogs, for horses, for rats, and for humans, that when you give the CBD with food, you get about 5 times better blood levels. And that's five if you've got more CBD in the blood, it's going to have more effectiveness. So, and I would start by doing that twice daily. This may not be an effective dose for your dog. It might have a very severe allergy. So what I and there is no one set dosage of CBD for all dogs. It's really very, very individual. It's based on what we call the endocannabinoid system of each dog and each person as well. That's why maybe you take CBD and it's great, and your neighbor takes it and says, that shit doesn't work for me. So that's why we have to tailor the dosage to the individuality of the dog. And the best way to do that is to start low, okay? And try that for about 2 weeks because the studies also show it takes about 2 weeks of oral administration of the CBD for it to reach what we call a steady state. That means the level in the blood is the same as the level in the tissues. That's when it has the most likelihood of actually having its full effect. So we give it 2 weeks, 10 days if you're in a hurry to have a full effect. And if it's not stopping the itching, which is a very visible, obvious effect, then double the dosage. The safety studies with CBD have shown that you can give as much as 65 milligrams of CBD per kilogram. That's 2 pounds. So basically 30 milligrams of CBD per pound. Um, very, very safely, and probably can give more. They just stop there. We're talking about a quarter of a milligram versus 30 milligrams. So don't worry, it's very safe. Some dogs may get a little sedated from it, depends on the product you're using. And in very rare cases, we might see some dogs develop soft stools or diarrhea. The CBD also can, like ginger, can stimulate receptors in the bowel that increase the movement of the digesta in the bowel, which oftentimes doesn't give it time to remove the water, so it gets a little soft. So that's okay. There's that answer for that question. Um, what's the next question?
Yeah, I have another one here. What would help with a dog licking his front paws multiple times a day? As a puppy, they removed his declaw and he seems to be licking that area a lot. He will get his front paw soaking wet and there is a black stain between his toes. He will flip his foot over and lick the back sides until they are wet. This happens every day. I have to put socks on to get him to stop. He is also itching his ears. Any ideas?
I do actually. I mentioned food allergies, and I mentioned that there are certain symptoms that we look for with food allergies. And you've just described to me two symptoms that we commonly see with food allergies. Now, I can't rule out the possibility that perhaps when the dog was deep, when the dew claws were removed, that there may have been something left in there or something that is a bit irritating to him that's causing him to lick his paws. And it might be that the moisture of the licking is setting up a secondary infection. So it might be wise to have the veterinarian at least maybe take an x-ray of that paw to see if there's any remnants of that dew claw that didn't get removed or anything like that. You really have to be there, in contact with the animal to evaluate that the best. But what we do know about food allergies is that some of the symptoms that they tend to create include what we call interdigital pyoderma. That's between the paws, which is what you're seeing. And the pyoderma means it's kind of a pussy infection. So oftentimes you get that funny smell that these dogs' paws can have. I don't know if this is the Frito the Frito corn chip smell or not, but they definitely get a smell that's very specific to this pyoderma. And it's because of the food allergies. And if you treat them with antibiotics, like systemic antibiotics, you're going to mess up the microflora in the bowel and probably worsen the food allergies. So I think the best way to address that, because there's an immediate problem, which is the dog is licking incessantly, and that licking, the friction, the licking, and the fluid from the saliva actually, do promote more of a can promote bacterial or fungal infection. So keeping it covered so the dog can't lick at it is actually a very good solution. And maybe, and socks oftentimes can get pretty wet and it can soak through. You might want to look online and see if you can find some Gore-Tex booties, which they make for dogs. They have a little Velcro thing. They're easy to put on and put off. They're waterproof. They're for dogs in the snow, and that might help to keep the dog from getting to those paws. And then you can start doing some sort of an herbal soak of those paws a couple times a day. And there's a lot of different herbs that could be really good for them. Even something like tea, black tea. If you brew black tea, or even just do like sun tea with a tea bag, it's very the tea has a lot of tannins in it, which are very astringent, and it has some antimicrobial properties as well. So you could soak the foot into this tea solution and then dry it off really well, and then put that Gore-Tex booty on. You could also sprinkle some herbal powder that might be antimicrobial. And there's a variety of different great herbs that are antimicrobial that you can buy powder for, that you can kind of sprinkle in there. There may be some commercial products as well. But that's what I would do. And it sounds like it's just the front paws. Sometimes it can be the back paws as well. But we also see the ears affected very commonly. And oftentimes when we can find out what the animal is allergic to in the diet, these things will all clear up. Now, a lot of people switch from one food to the other, thinking that if they just empirically trial and error, go from this food to that food to that food, they'll find one that works. And they might find one that works for a short period of time, because a dog that's allergic, it might be allergic to, let's say, ingredient A, if it's fed ingredient B that it's not allergic to long enough, 3 months, 6 months, whatever the time is for that dog, it can then become allergic to the ingredient that it wasn't allergic to. So that's where we talk about rotating ingredients. So the dog is never being fed an ingredient long enough to become allergic to. And each dog has their own period of time that it takes them to become allergic to that. And so we oftentimes say, once you can determine what it's allergic to and what it's not allergic to, you might have to sacrifice one of those non-allergic ingredients to find out how long it takes for the dog to become allergic to that, so that then you can know to rotate sooner than that time period. You don't want to rotate too frequently. It can confuse the dog. It's a pain to switch from one thing to another. But if you can find that appropriate length, that works. Now, I use a test to determine what the ingredients are in the food that the dog is allergic to. It's costly, but I think it saves you time and it saves you money. I mean, these diets these days are not cheap. Geez, $70 for 30 pounds. So this test, it's about $250. You can order it yourself online. It's called nutrascan.org, and Dr. Jean Dodds, if you're familiar with her, it's her test, it's her creation. I totally trust her. She will even analyze your results for you. And it gives you sensitivity to 24 different food ingredients. But then what they do is they tell you what other food ingredients, because usually there's two or three or four other food ingredients that cross-react with the 24 ingredients that they found. So it gives you a much wider range of ingredients. I've had a lot of success with it. I've heard a couple of people complain about it or didn't work so well for them. But I like the technology. I trust the company it comes from. There may be some other testing methods out there. What I like about this is that it doesn't measure, it measures the antibodies in the blood that are responsible for food intolerances and food sensitivities. And I think food intolerances and food sensitivities are more common than the classical food allergies. And so it really covers a lot of base. And I've had a lot of success using it. And if you wanted to use it, wanted to have me guide you with it, happy to do that. We could have you put my name on the test request form, so I'll get the results as well. But it's really it really is helpful in terms of figuring out what ingredients to avoid, and that really, to me, is the best way to address it. Now, there's a lot of other things we do, in terms of improving microbiome function, improving immune function, reducing the allergic response in terms of histamines and things like that. And we can go into those details, as we continue to talk about allergies here. But that's what I think we've got going on there are food allergies. And I think that you could probably fix it. The other location in the body for food allergies is the butt, the anal glands. And because the anal glands also the fluid in the anal glands is normally expressed every time the animal defecates. If this is okay, let's see. If this is the brown eye that never sleeps, you have on at 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock the anal glands. And every time a stool passes through the rectum and the anal sphincters squeeze down to pinch that loaf off, they also squeeze these anal glands out. And if they're normally not very thick in viscosity, they just kind of lay a little bead of anal gland material on the stool. This is why dogs sniff stools and then sniff each other's butts, because the anal glands contain pheromones that are very specific to the identity of that animal. So they can tell, who's been walking on their turf, by sniffing the butt, by sniffing the stool and sniffing the butt. So the other reason why anal glands may also be secondary to food allergies is, not uncommonly with food allergies, we also have a disruption of the stool quality. Many times the stool is soft, if not diarrhea, depending what you're feeding and how reactive the animal's immune system is. So a soft stool doesn't have that counter pressure to express those glands, and so they keep getting larger. And then because there's so many bacteria just coming out that coming out the butt on the stool, that the bacteria can travel retrograde into the anal sac, and then it can become infected, and then we get a lot more problems happening as well. So these are long-winded answers. I prefer to give long-winded answers. I was kind of limited with real mushrooms. I hope it's okay. Um, Better be okay because that's what I like doing here. So let's have another question.
Sure. Let's see here. What do you recommend to help with seasonal allergies?
Well, as I mentioned, seasonal allergies are quite challenging because it's hard to eliminate the environment. And and they can be allergic certainly to pollen, but in the wintertime, they can be allergic to dust in the house. If you're feeding kibble, which is not the best food to feed, by the way, but if you're feeding kibble, oftentimes we can get little food mites in the kibble that they could also be allergic to that. There's a couple of published studies in the dog showing that they're allergic to these food mites that are there as well. So, so the best way to address it is with the immunotherapy, which takes time, can be a bit of a pain in the butt. If you're doing the injections or if you're doing the oral, either way, the injections are less frequent. They're weekly, and then they taper them off to once a month when they're working. The orals are pretty much daily. Um, but that would be the approach. And then the other approach would be to work with the animal's microbiome, which there's a number of ways of doing that. Certainly looking at prebiotics, looking at probiotics, looking at postbiotics. Mushrooms have amazing ability to help the microbiome. They have the fiber in mushrooms feeds the good bugs in the microbiome, and then the beta glucans in the mushrooms have actually help to regulate the immune system so that it eliminates the bad bugs in the microbiome and helps to improve it. So ultimately, that could be a solution, but it may also take some time. There are some mushrooms, by the way, which have these terpenes in them, which have antihistaminic properties. And so they're not antihistamines, they're not drugs. They have these terpenes that actually go to the mast cells. The mast cells in the body are the allergy cells. And when they get stimulated by the immune system, they release histamine, which causes those symptoms. Well, these two terpenes, one's found in reishi, the Ganoderma mushroom, which you can see behind me right here, this beautiful big red disc. And the other is found in chaga, which is not really a mushroom, but is a canker that grows on birch trees. And so, so you can, if you take those mushrooms, it will reduce the histamine release. Is it perfect? Is it going to absolutely eliminate symptoms? No, but it's going to be very helpful. So looking at mushrooms, looking at for the fiber, looking at them for the beta glucans, and then there's some supplements. The first question she mentioned, she's using fish oil. Fish oil is the answer to almost any question about any problem in a dog or cat. I think fish oil should be the first thing that goes in, and it should be, and you should work the fish oil up to give them a pretty substantial dosage because they need to get enough of a dosage to have that anti-inflammatory and immune modulating effect. But there also was a nutraceutical called quercetin. And quercetin is the allergy nutraceutical. It also helps to reduce the histamine release from those mast cells. So you get kind of a double whammy on those mast cells with the mushrooms and with the quercetin. Nettle leaf is also known to be a good herbal remedy. The thing with nettle leaf, though, is it's really those little stinging hairs on the nettle leaf that has the antihistaminic effect. So you can't really feed the nettle leaf raw. And once you dry them, they start to lose that same potency from those little hairs. So you need to look at either alcohol tinctures or even better vinegar tinctures. You can make, and if you have nettles around, you can collect them, use big gloves because it stings like heck. And then you can macerate the leaves and you can soak them in vinegar and it can extract the goodies. Then you can serve the vinegar with the food. So those are, and then the palmitoyl ethanolamide, the PEA. is a is part of the CBD process of cascade of events in the body called the endocannabinoid system. And there's some really good studies in the cat and in the dog using PEA with both of them having seasonal allergies that it significantly reduced the symptoms and made them a lot more comfortable. Is it going to completely cure them and turn them back to square one? I don't know. Maybe for your pet it would, but those are the sorts of things that we would want to use in addition to looking at diet, to looking at some immunotherapy as well, for that. Next question.
Is acupuncture effective for any types of allergies?
I'm a strong proponent of acupuncture. I've been using it since 1990s. Um, and it can be helpful. It's not a magic bullet, but acupuncture helps to regulate the body so the immune system works better. It helps to reduce the aspects of the body that are reactive to the allergies. To me, the combination of using acupuncture and using Chinese herbs is ideal as another whole approach to allergies in addition to everything else that I've said. And when we use acupuncture and we use Chinese herbs appropriately, as though we were, which I am, but as practitioners of traditional Chinese veterinary medicine, we have to base our selection of acupuncture points in part on the animal's what we call constitution, and we need to learn from the animal what parts of it are in excess, what parts of it are in deficiency, what parts of it are too yin, what parts of it are too yang. And then we use the acupuncture and we use the Chinese herbs to balance the animal because the belief is that these things that we're seeing out of whack, whether it's the blood or the qi or the yin or the yang or whatever it might be, that when those are out of whack, that's what allows the allergies to happen. So by modifying them through acupuncture, through Chinese herbs, and through everything else I've said, it's a big deal. Allergies are a lot of work. I was so happy when I got Ollie as my rescue dog that he didn't have allergies and he didn't have bowel problems and he didn't have dental disease or ear problems. Instead, he's got PTSD and a bad hips from all his early trauma. So, you take what you can get, but allergies can be a real pain to have an allergic animal in the house, scratching and shedding and the odor and the amount of time, money, and energy that you have to spend to manage it. My heart goes out to you. And that's one reason why we thought kicking this off on allergies is a really good idea. So let's see, I'm
So
gonna
there's one more question here.
yeah.
Um, what is your best recommendation for yeast overgrowth in very allergic dogs?
Okay. Well, the yeast overgrowth, I'm kind of lost on my on this Zoom here. I wanted to, I'm not, I can find it all. I'm gonna, I'm gonna stop the share. Or did I already stop it? It looks like it's stopped, isn't it?
No, we can still see it.
Really? Okay.
Mhm.
How do I stop the thing? You sure? Okay. I don't know how to do it. Okay. Sorry, guys. Anyway, um, so would you repeat the question?
Yes. Let's see here. What is your best recommendation for yeast overgrowth in very allergic dogs?
Thank you. Okay. So the yeast overgrowth is secondary to the food allergies. And so if we can correct the food allergy, we can correct the yeast overgrowth. I know I've seen a lot of different um, um, websites and whatever that talk about, different ways of addressing the yeast as though the yeast is the problem. The yeast is not the problem. The yeast is the symptom of the problem. But the yeast is also in part responsible for creating some of the symptoms that we see with the skin, because the yeast can wind up being kind of caustic to the skin as well. So primarily, we look at changing the diet to eliminate the food allergies. But in the meantime, looking at some of the standard ways to address yeast. Personally, I think, depends, of course, on what the distribution is. Is it just one location? Is it in a wide variety of different locations. A shampoo, an herbal shampoo can be very helpful to help remove the yeast, the topical yeast, but the yeast lives in the skin. There also, can be herbs that we use which would have, some impact on the yeast. I think mushrooms would have a good impact, kind of fighting fire with fire, because yeast are also members of the fungi kingdom. But I think ultimately with the yeast, you're not going to be satisfied until you can eliminate it. And that I think is best done through modifying your diet to remove the ingredients that are offending to the animal. Okay, so there we go. And so where are we now, Haley, as far as more questions? Where are you on time? We're 15 minutes out of the end. We have a lot of questions, I think, still, hopefully.
Yep, I do have another one here.
Great.
What is your view on CBD prior or after dental extractions?
Well, I think CBD would be good in both contexts, both before and after. And I think CBD is best if it's not used as a single dosage, but if it's being used on an ongoing basis. If For those of you that were here for when I was talking about how to dose CBD, I mentioned that you really, you start with a low dose and you use it for a couple of weeks before you would decide if it's the right dose for that dog or that situation, or you want to increase it. So I would definitely use CBD beforehand. It'll help to calm the animal down. I would say, on the day, I wouldn't use it that morning on the day. I wouldn't use it that night before, maybe the morning, the day before. CBD has a fairly short half-life in the dog. Really, it only lasts about 6, 8 hours. So technically, we really should be giving it 3 times a day, but most dogs do just fine with twice a day. That's based on the pharmacokinetic studies that they've done, multiple ones on CBD in dogs. Um, and then I would use it afterwards, and I would use a pretty high dosage afterwards to try to get some more control over it. And I would like to say that there are other cannabinoids other than CBD. Everything CBD, CBD, CBD. That's what we all, have hear about, especially through marketing. But there are a number of other cannabinoids in the cannabis plant other than CBD. There's CBDA, which is the acidic form of CBD. Elevet Sciences in Maine makes a product that's CBD and CBDA, and they've done a lot of research showing that that has a lot of effectiveness. The problem with CBDA, it tastes terrible. My products don't have CBDA in them. I put CBG in them. CBG, it turns out in testing and side-by-side testing where they compare CBG to CBD to THC to CBDA, they find that CBDA and CBG are the strongest in terms of their anti-inflammatory activity, which would also be the activity you're looking for post extractions to reduce pain. But at the same time, I would like to encourage you to not reject every single pharmaceutical that's out there. If your dog has had, dental surgery and has had these extractions, that's painful, They're going to put local in there that it'll be okay for a little while, but if they offer you a narcotic pain reliever or an NSAID pain reliever or both following the procedure, I don't think it's going to upset the apple cart to use that for a day or two immediately after that procedure, just out of a sense of kindness to your animal. Just you don't, if your agenda is to avoid pharmaceuticals, great, but your agenda should also be that they shouldn't feel any pain. And so my suggestion, and you can use the CBD in combination with the pharmaceuticals, no problem, in spite of what they might tell you. So I would use it all. If you're dealing with that kind of trauma, I would use everything possible until they start recovering. Okay, next. I'm having fun.
All right. I have an 8-year neutered male that humps my other dog whenever he gets excited. How can I help get his hormones back in balance, or is this normal? Any ideas?
Well, for one, maybe the surgery wasn't done properly and there's a remnant in there of the testicle. When I adopted Ollie, they thought he was neutered. He was 6 months old and he didn't have any testicles. Turned out they were undescended, and undescended testicles tends to make a male even hornier. Um, but there also are other sources of the testosterone, like the adrenal glands. And so it may be that the dog just has an overly active adrenal gland. I don't think that there's a way that I could recommend for us to um, suppress, those that testosterone. And I think that this is really more of a job for some behavioral training, and maybe situational, being aware of the situation and of not allowing that situation to occur. If it's not hurting the other dog and the other dog just thinks it's play, and not actually trying to enter it or anything like that, maybe it's not such a big deal. Maybe it's just something that, it's hard to look at, but isn't really going to cause any harm to anybody involved. Next. And if somebody, if these questions are for someone who's on right now and you want to modify it or something, then please raise your hand and unmute yourself and chat, okay? Because I'd love this to be interactive. I really like the interactive aspect of it.
So I did just get one that came through the chat here. Can you give CBD and CBDA with CBD and CBG?
Yeah, of course, you can give them all together. They're naturally occurring on the plant, and that's the thing I don't understand. All there, I don't know what kind of information people are giving you, but the it seems like there's a lot of information that CBD, cannabis, that they're very risky, they're very dangerous, they're not safe, and this really is just not true, and the interactions with other drugs minimal, if at all. So yeah, I think a full spectrum cannabis, cannabinoid extract might have all of those cannabinoids in them at the same time. So maybe not the levels that someone might have, purposefully put in this much and that much and that much of each. So, we're looking at these different cannabinoids now. As CBD is getting to be kind of old hat, a lot of these companies that kind of made their name with CBD are looking at other ways of providing value to their customers by adding other cannabinoids in there. So you're going to see a lot more about that. And I wanted to say that the book, even though the title is There's a Mushroom for That, the book actually has a lot of information in it on cannabis and CBD and how to use it, how to dose it, even how to use products that have THC in them. Because THC can be a problem for a dog, because dogs are super, super sensitive to it. THC is a great drug. It has many valuable properties, including for pain relief. But if you give too much of it too soon to a dog, you might send them to the ER. So the book has a way that you can introduce it to your dog safely if you live in a state where you have adult use cannabis, where any 21-year-old with a 21-year-old ID can walk into a store and buy a product with THC in it, give it to their dog, and send them right to the ER. But you can take advantage of that fact that you have access to THC as well. And I have guidance in the book as far as how to make a liquid tincture from THC that you can absolutely control the amount you're giving to your dog in a very exact way to avoid any kind of adverse side effects and get it more used to it. So, more?
All right, yeah, there, yep. We got another one here. I had been feeding my dogs hydrated beef tracheas, but recently noticed they have little white flies on them. Should I toss them? Are they okay to still feed?
Well, I think, we're seeing a great deal of interest in all these body parts. The pet shop I take Ollie to get him brushed out. They even sell these dehydrated duck heads, which he loves, and duck esophaguses and things that they're kind of, they're kind of gross, but the dogs love them. But I think that they could be potentially a source of bacterial contamination or other things as well. So I think that, the fact that you're seeing little white flies on it makes me a little nervous. I don't think I can recommend that you keep feeding that. But but I also I think this is a good thing, this trend that we're seeing in terms of trying to feed animals like the wild diet that they would originally get, making their plates very interesting for them. So there's not just just not throwing kibble down, trying to enrich their environment. But I think there is also a potential risk with these things. That doesn't mean you shouldn't use them. Just means be smart and look them over and see what you're taking in. And I see a hand raised by Lily. Lily, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Okay. See if I get my volume up.
There you go.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, I've been feeding these beef tracheas for about 2 years,
Okay.
and my dog's liver enzymes have been skyrocketing.
Okay.
And I'm wondering if that's the link.
Could be. How about stop feeding them and then
Yeah,
recheck
I'm
them?
going to stop feeding. I'm treating her right now with juniper, giving it 10 drops twice a day, and then I'll retest her. But when you said the bacteria, and I thought, the liver's trying to clean the body, and I was thinking maybe it's the beef tracheas.
What kind of juniper are you giving? Is that essential oil? Is that a flower?
It's a herb.
Okay. So
Yeah.
it's like a tincture?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would, it's possible that the elevated liver enzymes are coming on their own from some pathology within your dog. It's possible that juniper could be responsible for that as much as maybe some, bacterial contamination on the beef tracheas. I will say the beef trachea is a great source of undenatured type 2 collagen, which is really good for arthritis. And I've seen
Wow.
there used to be a product out there where they took beef tracheas, they made them these little discs. They were
Yeah.
great for that. I'm not against. So I think beef trachea can have a lot of value.
Okay.
But and again, it just it depends on what the source is and what they're contaminated. But what I would do is I would discontinue both. Okay,
Okay.
2 weeks or to 4 weeks and retest the liver values and see,
Okay.
because that will tell you. And if it's not them, then it might be your dog. And in which case, it's good to know because then you start getting some liver herbs and other types of um, modifications of diet and things like that to help support the liver. The liver is an organ that has a lot of reserve capacity, and even with elevated enzymes, oftentimes we can get the liver to recover and do well. And I know we're at the end of our hour here. I'm
And
gonna,
I added her on after reading your book.
yeah,
I put her on reishi to help with the
reishi.
liver.
Reishi's great for the liver.
Reishi.
A great
Yeah.
mushroom in general. The capsules probably.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I'm opening them up and putting her the food, and she's also. I just started on the lion mane to help
Okay.
with the gut because she was having some loose stools. So I
Okay.
thought that would help that.
Well, there was a study in the lion's mane that came out of Japan where they put the dried lion's mane on dogs' kibble. They measured the microbiome before and they measured it after, and the microbiome really improved a lot with the addition of the lion's mane. Now, I
Okay.
think the lion's mane is really good for that. Historically, lion's mane was used for digestive stuff long before we learned it was good for brain stuff. But I
Okay.
also think that any mushroom would be good for the microbiome. So, lion's mane and the reishi is a great combo.
Could I ask you one other question?
You got it. You got
I
you.
have a Cocker Spaniel, 8 years old. He's the one that has the itchy ears and been licking the paws in the front.
Okay.
I will fix his food and he will not go over to it. And then he'll wait 2 or 3 minutes for my other dog to eat.
Hmm.
And then he'll get up and he'll stare at it for another minute or two. And then maybe he'll eat it. And when he drinks water, he'll stare at it. He's fearful of truck noises, motorcycles, thunderstorms. And he'll come next to me and he'll put his head down and just stand next to me and cower his head down.
Well, this is a rescue dog.
Yes.
Yeah.
He
Um,
came from a place that had 60 animals,
yeah. I
and
think
they left them for 2 weeks all alone by themselves on the property.
I think what you're seeing is more behavioral than some kind of
Okay.
a medical issue. Ollie, Ollie won't take the little soft chews that are so tasty that I made. He
Yeah.
won't take them if I put them to him this way. I have to put them on his bed and then turn around and act like I'm not noticing what he's
Okay.
doing and then he'll eat them. So I think it may be more behavioral. You may want to try that lion's mane for that dog as well, not just for the
Okay.
microbiome, but also for the mentation and the mood. And you might also want to try some CBD or CBD and CBG as with my
Okay.
products. We have there is a soft chew that Real Mushrooms makes that is also very calming. It has lion's mane and reishi together, but it also
Okay.
has tryptophan and other types of herbs that are very calming. And so that
Okay.
might also be helpful, especially if you combine that with CBD. I'm working on Ollie's PTSD. I've actually started
Okay.
a canine microdose project. We're
Okay.
talking about the use of psilocybin because people are finding microdosing for themselves seems to be helping a lot of things. And there's many dogs out there that have these terribly intractable behavior problems because they've been treated so abusively
Right.
early on. And I'm trying that with Ollie because what better animal to experiment on than the vet's
Right.
dog. And still waiting to see. I think he's showing a little bit of response, but I'm not sure. So
Okay.
yeah, that's the behavior problems that we see from the abuse our critters get, really is in many cases the source of these things. The allergies may come from that whole abuse thing and
Yeah.
that brain gut connection secondary to the abuse that then affects the immune system.
Right. That's true. Right.
Thank you
Well,
for
thank you so much. Your book is amazing. I'm enjoying it. So thank you a lot. And I
thank you.
appreciate these monthly lives. They're great. Thank you. All
Well, we'll see you next month.
right. Thanks.
So how are we doing on questions? I don't want to keep people too long, but if there's more pressing questions, I would like to. I'm having fun. I'm here for you.
Yeah, that's currently all that I'm seeing here, but
Okay, great. So, and we still have 30 people here. That's terrific. So, I hope that this has been good for you, other than my having fun doing it. And we'll see you next month. We'll send you a notice around to let you know when the recording is available to you